Hi everyone, thank you for joining the today. I think we are live. Uh, Good morning, good evening, or good afternoon, depending on which part of the world you are joining us from. Thank you for being here today and for this exciting new episode of Voices of Community. We will give a minute or two for letting more folks join in. In the meantime, drop a hi in the chat along with the country you are joining us from and give a warm welcome to our special guest for today. Some of you might already recognize him from his popular Quality Talks podcast, but let me introduce him. Stuart Day is head of quality engineering at Capital One with over 25 years of experience in tech, testing, and quality across industries like retail, financial services, etc. Stuart is also a certified coach, international speaker, blogger, and podcast host. His focus goes beyond tech and tools. Stuart is very passionate about empowering teams by building culture of quality that starts with people. Hi, Stuart. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. And thank you for the invite. It's great to be here.
Thank you for joining us today. In today's Voices of Community session, we will be exploring how organizations can shift their quality mindset by prioritizing people, process, tools, and culture. Stuart will share how these elements can transform your approach to delivering a continuous value, helping you truly embed quality at every step. Before we start, please use the Q&A section to ask your questions, and Stuart will take them in the end. Over to you, Stuart.
Thank you very much. And I'm just seeing, like, looking at the chat now. Hey, Philippa, I see you there in Leicester. We've got North Coast of America. Oh, this is great. I love this. All parts of the world. Brilliant. Okay, so shall we get cracking then?
Yes, definitely.
Let's share my screen. Okay. You see my screen okay?
Yes, yes.
Perfect. Okay, so welcome everyone. As mentioned, I'm Stuart Day. It's great to be here, supporting the LambdaTest for the community. This evening, I'm going to be talking to you about achieving continuous quality, and that's through people, process, tools, and culture. If you see me looking up here, it's because that's where my screen and my slides are. I'm not being rude, even though I know you're there. Okay, so I'm gonna talk to you a little bit about these four things, but really what this talk is around is helping you, and hopefully it will help you get some ideas of how you can approach trying to achieve continuous quality in your organizations. What I'm going to talk to you about isn't necessarily a cookie cutter approach, but it hopefully gives you some ideas on how you can ideas to take away and how you can then apply them in your own situations, organizations, some of the challenges that you might have. And I look forward to answering some questions at the end as well. So let's get cracking. Achieving continuous quality through people, process, tools, and culture. So before we can really talk about that, this is a little bit about me. You don't really need to know too much. Just have a little look. I'd like to ask you a question around what is quality. So before we can really talk about achieving continuous quality, we need to ask ourselves, what does quality really mean to us, not only in our organizations, but in our everyday lives? Every day, consciously or subconsciously, we will be faced with choices and decisions around quality, whether that be the cereal we eat in the morning, whether it be the transport we take to and from work. Some people may take the train because they feel that the public transport is of a higher quality than the bus service, or we may take the car because we've got more control, and actually the quality of the comfort within the vehicle is far greater than on a bus or on a train. So every day we're faced with these choices. So when we come to talk about this in our organizations, it can be quite difficult to actually start describing what it means. So I want you to have a little think. I'm sure everybody on this webinar this evening, or this morning, depending on where you are in the world, has one of these, not necessarily one of these devices, but has a mobile device. And to pick your device, you might have chosen an Apple device. You might have chosen an Android device. And there'll be reasons behind why you chose those devices. So your preference might be the size of the phone. Your preference might be the quality of the screen, the resolution. Your preference might be, you know, the OS and the actual operating system itself. So you might be an iOS fan, or you might be an Android fan. But all of these are choices, and actually they relate to the quality of the device that we have, that we hold in our hands. And as I say, they're personal choices to us. I have a Google Pixel phone. I really love that phone. I think it serves my purposes. It meets my needs. I also have an iPhone for work. But for work, it's fine, because really all I do is go on Slack, look at emails, check my calendar. I don't really do much else with it. However, I wouldn't want an iPhone in my personal life because it doesn't quite meet my needs. So just take a moment to think about that and reflect on that. And ultimately, what it means is quality in itself is subjective. It means different things to different people at different times based on their needs, based on our needs. So when you put that into an organizational sense, and then the customer that we're servicing, we have to take the customer into consideration. And often we sometimes disconnect. We focus so much on ensuring that the thing or the product that we're building meets the requirements, and we often forget about the actual customer and whether the product actually meets the customer needs in the first place. And this is where the concept of continuous quality comes in, and ensuring that we embed it throughout. So how can we define quality then? Often in the software world, these are the sorts of things that will be discussed when we say, you know, when we talk about quality, when we measure quality. So things like how many tests have passed and failed, okay? Having a green build in our pipelines, having no defects, okay? Having many, how many automated tests do you have? The more automated tests we have, the better, obviously the higher quality. Not necessarily. And having a happy customer. Is it just one customer, or are there multiple customers? And I'm not just talking about externally, I'm also talking about internally to our organizations. But these are often the things that we relate to when we talk about measuring quality or how quality is defined. Now, it doesn't really matter how many tests have passed or failed, because if those things aren't testing the right functionality or the what really matters to the customer in the first place, it doesn't matter. Okay, it doesn't matter if we don't have any defects. Even if the product that we built meets the requirements, if the requirements don't match what the customer needs, it doesn't matter. So we have to think more holistically about quality, and testing alone does not and cannot ever equal quality. Now, if you've listened to the podcast at any point, we do a whole discussion around this and what quality is, so you can get more information and you know, delve into this a little bit more. But testing alone does not equal quality, and that's something that I've learned over the years. When I first got into the industry 26 years ago, you know, I was a software tester at heart, and everything was about, does it meet the requirements? Do the tests pass? Do we have any defects? You know, etc., etc. I wasn't really connected to the customer at all. Now I am. Now I really want to understand who our customers are, and as I say, not just externally but internally as well. So how do we really start shifting that narrative then? So first of all, as I mentioned before, we need to decide what quality really means. Now, it will mean different things to different people, as discussed, but also within an organization, you need to come to an understanding of what it means to you and your organization, so that then the teams can deliver to that. So how do we shift that narrative? Well, firstly, we come up with a narrative, okay? And how I describe quality in my everyday life now, this isn't how we describe it at Capital One, because we've defined it differently based on how we feel best matches the interests of our customers and our business. But this is how I describe it. So delivering the right value in the right way based on customer needs. Okay. So trying to come to a place where you have some sort of statement you can hang on to, you can build off of. And I've introduced this concept of the 6 Qs of quality. Now, there's no real big magic moment here. The Qs simply stand for questions, okay? And often we don't, the main questions we generally ask when we're looking at building a new product is, what is it we're going to build? Okay. And what is it we need to test? We'll maybe get into the conversations around how do we need to build it and how do we need to test it? But really where we should start is why? Why are we doing this in the first place? Why are we proposing this idea? What is the problem that we're trying to solve? How does this add value to our customers? Why are we doing this? Now, sometimes when you position it in that way, so literally saying, why are we doing this? People may get a little bit defensive and, push back and say, well, we're doing this because of X, Y, and Z. But it's more about building a connection with the product you're building and the customers who it's going to, and ensuring that what we're going to do serves the customers. And as I say, it's not just the external customers, it's internal customers as well. So, if you look at, any organization, whether it be retail, whether it be financial services, you'll always have the end customer, you'll have internal customers. Some of those customers might be customer service operatives, for example. Some of them might be warehouse staff. Some of them might be staff in stores if you're a retail company. All these people will be impacted by the products that we build in some way. So we need to make sure that we build them and they can be supported, they do what they need to do at all levels. So we really need to understand why, and that obviously leads us into the who. So who are the customers, as I just talked about? Getting to know, who are the customers, where, what is the customer base? Is it local? Is it international, etc., etc.? Who are the people involved in what we're going to be doing? You can look at it from a team perspective as well. Who are the people? And then we can kind of get into the what. What is it we need to build? What is it we need to test? What are the skills we need in the team? So it's not all about just the thing that we're going to build. What are the skills we need? And there's so much we can gather just within that space. Then we can move on to the how. And these don't necessarily need to go in this order, by the way. Obviously, ideally you want to start with the why to get a good understanding, but over time you can bounce these around. You might start looking at the what. You might go into the how. How are we going to build this? How are we going to test it? How are we going to release it? How are we going to support it? How are we going to monitor it, observe it? So many things that we can start talking about around there. And then you sort of work through to the where. Where are we going to do these things? Where do we need to deploy to? Where are we releasing? What regions, etc.? And then the when. Now, the when is an interesting one. So often we get into a situation where we say, when do you want it? And people will generally say now or as soon as possible. But we need to reframe that and say, when do we need it? So, the reason I say that is because deadline pressures can have an adverse effect on quality. So pushing those deadlines when they're not necessary, is counterproductive. So understanding how, and why we need to deliver something and when we need it to, when we need to deliver it by is really important, because that allows us to then answer some more, go back and have a look at those whats and hows, and actually maybe we need to adjust the scope of what we're building. Okay, maybe we need to adapt it to be a more of an MVP approach if there is a genuine reason why we have to deliver it by a certain time. So hopefully these questions all can connect to each other, and use them as a framework to question, find out information, use that information to then start building out a vision of what it is you need to deliver and how you're going to do that, and so on. And you can do this iteratively. You don't need to do all this up front. You can obviously build on this iteratively. But often we don't go through this process of asking these types of questions in this way. So how do we use those questions and start influencing our ways of working and mindset? Now, I've kind of started talking and touching on that already, but often we get caught up in this world of waterfall and agile and how fast can we go, and we need to go faster, and waterfall's bad and agile's good, and if we do agile then everything's going to be great. So, and even I used to be in that world, but nowadays I don't even talk about, well, other than on this call, on this talk, obviously, I don't generally talk about waterfall and agile. I talk about, or I prefer to talk about, agility, and pitching it in a way that is focused on your organization and what level of agility do you need to succeed in what it is you're trying to do. And on the left-hand side of this very, very simple diagram here, you have minimal agility. Okay, so really regulated organizations may sit in this world, but that's where they have to be. But that doesn't mean they can't build levels of agility into what they do. All right. And on the far right, you've got extreme agility. Now, this may be startups, okay, where they don't have any board members, they don't have any shareholders, they basically call the shots and can make the decisions really, really quickly. Sometimes that also creates chaos and can be counterproductive, okay? And often, not often, but on occasions, that may then drive them to release a product, the first time of releasing a brand new product in a startup, and the quality of that product isn't very good because they've been, trying to get something out really quick, and actually the first impression of that product can be very poor. Okay, that can hamper them moving forward because it's their brand. Okay, quality is also a brand thing, and you have to remember that. So I talk about it in an agility world, and the reason I do that is because if you look at these two diagrams here, I think you'll agree they look very similar. Okay, and by all means they are. One is actually the waterfall flow, and the other one is a Kanban board. But they resemble the same thing. They resemble flows of work or phases through a delivery cycle. But why does the Kanban board look like a waterfall process when ultimately it's supposed to be agile, and it's supposed to be quicker, and it's supposed to be, well, the problems both of these approaches have are defined here. We have these phased approaches, and we have a testing phase, even in the Kanban situation. And it drives the wrong behavior. If we want to get to a place where we're building quality into our products throughout, having a testing phase doesn't help us. Really, we need to be testing throughout, as well as other things, doing other things that ultimately allow us to build quality in and get regular feedback loops to ensure that we're on the right track, we're doing the right things, we've got the customer in mind, we're meeting those, we're hitting those targets, that we want to hit. And for both of these models, they promote the wrong mindset. So, promoting testing and quality as a phase in a cycle versus continuous testing and quality, as I mentioned. They encourage handoffs and create this silo world, versus continuous collaboration and having whole team ownership. We're very good at saying to people nowadays, the whole team owns quality, and yet I see a lot of teams still working this way. Doesn't quite feel right to me. It puts focus on issue detection and safety nets rather than issue prevention, and continuous feedback, and it encourages a phased delivery. So regardless of whether you're working Kanban, Scrum, or whatever the agile methodology is that you're using versus waterfall, it doesn't really matter if you've got this kind of handoff type approach, phases of work where you just kind of hand it over the fence and go, well, that's not my problem anymore. That's the tester's problem. Okay, that's not the world we want to be in if we want to try and achieve continuous quality. So I'm sure you've all heard of shifting left, and the term gets bounced around a lot. I hear it most days in a lot of conversations about shifting left, but often when people talk about shifting left, they only talk about testing earlier in a cycle of delivering software. And often that sits within the pipeline as well. But actually, to really shift left, it goes all the way to ideation, the original, what is the idea, and shifting all the way there. And that's where we can start building quality in from that point by asking those questions, using those 6 Qs, building a common understanding, thinking about how we, looking at how we prevent issues. And by doing that, and starting to build that mindset of collaboration early, bringing all the people to the party early, asking those questions, we start building that common understanding. We start thinking about issue prevention. We can then start building in different ways of working around paired coding, paired testing. Automation obviously helps massively so, but again, it's the investment for automation, or the value in automation, is what you do up front in defining what it is you want to build in the first place. If you don't put that time in up front to get that common understanding, the automation may not be even testing the right thing. The tests themselves need to be of a certain quality as well. The code that we're writing needs to be of a good quality, etc., etc. So this is all the things that we should be thinking about when we're shifting left. It's not just about testing earlier. It's about all these components that make it up. And ultimately, if we're doing those things, we should start building in, quality. And then by doing that, if we're doing these things and our competitors aren't, we should start seeing a bit of a competitive advantage as well. We should start seeing higher frequency of releases. But not just higher frequency of releases, being able to ship things quicker, build things quicker, and hopefully, in theory, less, reverting and less fixing and so on. So for me, shift left isn't just shifting your testing and getting your developers to test. Shifting left is bringing people all the way to the beginning of the process and being in those ideation sessions, using things like example mapping early to really define what it is that you're looking to build and who the customers are, building out those scenarios, and building that common understanding. And then from there, you write your code, you write your tests and collaborate, etc. But if you notice, everything here is each of these boxes has continuous collaboration and feedback throughout. It's not a moment in time, it's ongoing. You need to make sure you have those feedback loops. Now, I want to talk about shifting right. It starts to get talked about more, not as much as shifting left, but there's a lot of value in shifting right. And what I mean by shifting right is predominantly production. Okay, what can we learn in production? What testing can we do in production? You know, we can run experiments, we can toggle features on and off, we can do canary releases, you know, we can ensure that, you know, we can do performance testing using our monitoring that gives us information about what our customers are doing, so on and so on. There's so much we can learn by using our production systems that tell us whether we're delivering we're delivering a quality product, but also can feed back in to ensure that we build a quality product through our experimentation, as an example. Through releasing to a subset of customers to start with, we can get a feel for, is the thing that we built actually delivering the value we thought it would? Or do we need to pivot? Rather than releasing it to 100% of customers, maybe we pivot and make some changes and then go again. And often that doesn't get used enough. There's some fear around doing this kind of thing in production, especially things like performance testing. A lot of people are concerned about doing performance testing in production because obviously the risk of taking down the production environment. Well, it is a risk, absolutely. However, if you've got the right monitoring in place, it shouldn't be a risk, because your monitoring, your observation through that monitoring should give you insights as to how the system's performing. Now, if you don't have the monitoring, yes, I understand it. But again, it's a good way of understanding what monitoring you have and don't have as well. So I think that, you know, there's a lot more value in shifting right than I think people think about, and it's not done as much as it really should be. But those two terms, shifting left and shifting right, I generally don't use as much anymore, but I do use the continuous quality concept. So it's basically doing those things all the time and looping back round and taking the feedback in and, you know, iteratively improving, and ensuring that we've got those continuous feedback loops, ensuring that we're doing, you know, we've got continuous collaboration throughout, ensuring that people are coming together and utilizing, you know, tools and process and such like, to basically do that shift left, shift right approach, but in a continuous way. So how can you start then helping, you know, installing this into your organization? So you've got this idea of what quality means, you've got a narrative, you understand how you can influence process, but how can you then hold people to account or hold or measure anything, or, you know, that kind of thing? So by introducing some core values that sit as a guide for people in terms of what is expected of them. And remember, this isn't just a QA software tester thing. This is a everybody in the team thing, and how their role contributes to quality. Having some core values really helps, because then you can associate them to each of those individuals in your teams. Here's some examples of some core values I've used in the past. So quality first and for all, helping people really get behind that and making sure that they all understand that it's a whole team ownership thing, etc., etc. Defining, you know, what continuous quality really means again, and then also, you know, the quality versus speed, or you could picture it in a different way, risk versus reward. So for me, I prefer to go with the risk versus reward type approach on a lot of these things, because dependent on our risk appetite, you know, if our risk appetite is there and the reward is really high, maybe we'll go quicker. If it's not, maybe we'll go slower. So really, the quality and the speed is defined by risk and reward for me. But these are some examples of what you can do to kind of start building a vision for people to get behind, start understanding what they need to focus on a day-to-day basis, how they should behave, how they should think, and then just kind of start building that culture from there. So there's a lot of talk about quality engineering now. Now, if you put 10, 20, 30 people in a room and start talking about quality engineering, you'll probably get many different discussions going on around what that means. So I'll talk to you about what I think it means. Often people, when talking about quality engineering, go for these kind of things. They very much focus on the tools. They very much focus on the automation, continuous integration, those kind of things. But I think as people are getting more understanding of the holistic quality and thinking about how we build it in, I think people are starting to shift that mindset a bit more. But for me, quality engineering is made up of two parts. One is around the ability to do continuous testing and utilizing tools and automation. The other part is what I mentioned before, having that continuous quality lens and focusing on people, culture, and mindset. And if you bring these two together, that for me is what quality engineering is. And it's a simple case of engineering quality in throughout, or weaving it in throughout, utilizing all these mechanisms, leveraging your people, leveraging the skills, because without the people on the right, the stuff on the left doesn't really get you anywhere. You need that thought, you need that collaboration, and you need people to build these tools, right? Use these tools. There's no point in just having somebody sat there writing a load of automation if they're not really collaborating with anybody and understanding why they're doing it. So bringing these two worlds together and almost basically overlapping them is how I look at and how I define quality engineering. So, but off the back of that, to continue to grow this culture that we're talking about and achieving continuous quality, you can then go and start looking at how you introduce some quality engineering principles. Now, again, often people start with or stick with the technical side of things. So here's some examples of some quality engineering principles that you could think about. So look at how we build, how we design for testability. How we build, how we design so that we can actually automate something in the first place, or not just automate our tests, but automate our processes and other things. Ensuring that we're building and designing with performance in mind, and so on and so on. Again, these are just examples, but they're things that you can start building into your everyday thinking and almost use them as a checklist. Again, coming back to your 6 Qs, you could ask and frame questions around these principles. But don't stop there. Remember, we also have the people and the humanistic side of things, where we want to be thinking about issue prevention. We want to be thinking about collaboration. How can we build an environment where people can fail fast and learn? Because that's where your real agility comes in. That's how you can iterate quickly. That's how you can weave and build quality into a product. How do we get qualitative feedback versus quantitative feedback? Often we focus on number of tests, passed and failed. That's very quantitative. What's the message behind it is the qualitative statement. Okay, so again, thinking about that. And then how do we leverage more exploration? We focus, again, very much on automation for speed, but exploration is something that can really, really build a lot of quality into our products. Yeah, it frees us up to think differently. It frees us up to put ourselves into the customer's shoes and explore the product that we've built. And then unearths new things, unearths new findings, and unearths new information. So we can leverage these things together. So we can leverage the technical side and the non-technical side together. And again, these are just examples. You don't have to take these and use them. I'm just trying to talk through a framework that can help you start achieving and building that culture around continuous quality. So this is all very well and good, but then how do you even measure success? Measuring quality is hard. We said it's subjective. So if we're not counting tests and we're not looking at pass-fail rates and things, how do we measure quality? Well, here's some ideas. Obviously, an obvious one is how many issues have we found in production or have gone into production. Looking at our technical debt over time. Thinking about are we actually doing things in the right way, and if we're not, are we coming back to fix those things after? Looking at those technical debt elements and tracking that. Customer feedback. How often do we actually speak to our customers? How often do we look at ROI on the things that we release? How often do we look at our pipelines and look at the quality of our pipelines rather than just the tests that are running and the code that runs through them, but the actual pipelines themselves, how they're set up, how they're run, the stability of them, the release trends. So a number of things there that we can look at and build on and measure quality. But to do that, you also need to introduce skills. Okay, so you're looking at the people side of things here now. So you kind of defined a lot of things there, or we talked about a lot of things. And we're not saying that every single person in the team needs all these different skills. What we're saying is a team needs these different skills. So how do you supplement all these different skills and ensure that people are blending well? So don't try and look for unicorns that have all these skills. And we find often nowadays we try and recruit people that can do everything. They do a bit of everything, and maybe that's not always the best way. So if we're able to supplement teams, thinking about what skills do we need from a testing and engineering perspective, tools and automation, mindset and behavior, and supplement each other, then that starts building out that quality from within. So if we get to a point where we start doing these things, iteratively improving or iteratively building our capabilities to achieve continuous quality, how do we then improve and how do we measure success of that improvement? And where do we focus our efforts to improve? That's difficult. Depending on how many teams you have, it can be very, very difficult. One way you can do that is by building a quality maturity health check, if you like. So from the quality narrative that you've defined, from the values that you've put in place, from the principles that you have, you can build a maturity model. And you can simply create a set of questions, as an example, against those things that enable teams to measure their level of success, a level of maturity. You capture that information and the comments that come out of those conversations, and that then enables you to create something like this. Now, this is a version from a maturity check that I did with teams a while ago. Obviously, it's anonymized. You don't really have the questions on here either, but even then, you can start seeing that you'll start seeing little hotspots in certain areas. So team 12 and team 13 have 2 reds in the exact same space on the exact same row. Now that row might be pipeline health, or it might be environment health, or it might, but it starts giving you indications of where, there might be hotspots of issues that need to be addressed more formally, or where teams themselves may be able to address them themselves. But the point being is that everything that come before, in terms of the narrative, the values, and the principles, enable you to then start building out this model that enables you to measure the maturity of how you're doing as teams and building that quality approach and mindset. And then final thoughts, really, you need to keep innovating and you need to keep evolving. As I said at the start, this isn't me telling you to do this. This is me giving you some ideas. This is a framework that I'm currently using in my role at Capital One as we go on this journey together. And there'll be loads of learnings from that as well. So I might come back in 6 months' time, talk to you about some of the things that really worked well and some of the things that didn't work well. So if you take away some nuggets of information from this or some ideas and you adapt them, amazing. Basically, you need to figure out what works best for you in your organizations. You know your organization's best, but this is a framework where you can at least start and start thinking about how you can approach it and shaping some of that. But you do need to keep evolving. You do need to keep innovating. Things change. The world moves on. If we continue doing the same thing day in, day out, we'll become extinct. So just keep that in mind. And finally, as I say, on the podcast, we talk about this stuff a lot. So if you want to follow us, we're on YouTube, we're on Spotify. Very happy for people to get involved in what we do in the community. So yeah, thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Stuart. Thank you, Stuart, for sharing such an amazing insights. Really like the idea of seeing things from a very different direction and how to maintain the proper balance of values, mindset, and collaboration. I think a lot of us will taking some tips from your session and implement in their day-to-day journey. I would request if you want to ask any questions from Stuart, feel free to drop in the Q&A section. While we have some questions there, let me pull one up. One question is from our anonymous attendees. As an individual QA working in a bin organization, how would you recommend I get the buy-in of more senior people in my capabilities and organization to be able to drive these ideas forward?
It's a really good question, and I think if you're an individual in your organization, so an individual QA, or even an individual in a team, the biggest thing for me, and I've been in that situation, is finding allies. Allies within the teams. It might be your software developers, it might be your product owners, it might be your delivery leads that are wanting to achieve the same thing, who are really trying to look at it from a customer's perspective, and by using this framework you can start conversations with people and find those allies. And often, especially in sort of my type of role now, where I'm going in and looking to do transformational change, I have to do exactly the same thing. I can't go into an organization and assume all the QAs are going to understand this, or all the QAs are even going to engage and be on the same page. So I have to find those allies, and some of those allies are not even in the QA space. They are within senior leadership. They are within our software development teams, or software developers, sorry. So for me, it's about allyship. Find those allies and help bring them on a journey, but then help let them bolster you and go on that journey together, and then convince others and so on. That's how I would approach that.
That's a very good idea. Thank you, Stuart.
Hopefully that answers the question.
If you have any follow-up question, feel free to put in the Q&A section. The next question is, what are some biggest mindset barriers people have come up when they are adopting the quality first approach, and how do we address them?
So what are some of the biggest mindset barriers? I think more generally that the biggest mindset barrier is the speed versus quality piece. And that's often driven by, we just need to go faster. We need to be quicker. We need to deliver quicker. We need more automation. And often we don't do that in a balanced way. And that way, and we're so keen on, or so quick to start writing code, because we think by writing code quickly it gets us things out quicker. That's not always true. And I've been having these same conversations with our teams, the teams that I'm working with now, when we're doing upfront work and workshops on example mapping, how we can leverage example mapping. And anybody who hasn't done example mapping and not sure what it is, feel free to reach out. I'll happily talk to you more about that. But it's a great process to, really define what it is you want to deliver up front, and categorize things in a prioritized way, and with the customer in mind, looking at rules and looking at examples of how you want this product to work, and actually that will speed you up, rather than kind of start code quickly and then all of a sudden realize we're building the wrong thing. We find that out when we're testing it, or when we do a demo to our product owners. So for me, I think the biggest barriers for people are, this is going to slow us down, right? And actually it's not true. Ultimately it will speed us up. And I think that's the hurdle we've got to get over with people. And I think often the best way to do that is by just trying things, experimenting with things. Take small steps. Don't try and change the world. Take small steps. Maybe change how you're doing your refinements. Maybe, if you're not doing the 3 𝐒𝐴MIGOs, maybe start doing 3 𝐒𝐴MIGOs, and collaboratively defining what it is you want to deliver, and so on. So I think for me, that's the biggest hurdle or barrier.
Thank you, Stuart. I hope that answers the question. The next question is, how do you respond to people who feel that quality process and therefore the quality product will automatically come as a part of model like Scrum if it is implemented properly?
Yeah, respond to people who feel that quality processes and therefore. Yes. So it kind of comes back to what I was saying in those two diagrams. Okay. So just by implementing Scrum or Kanban or any other, insert your agile terminology here, will not automatically deliver a quality product. Okay. I've worked in teams in the past that have gone, right, we're going to adopt Scrum, we're going to adopt Kanban, it's going to solve all our problems, and actually the problems got worse. Now, the thing is, by utilizing these frameworks or these methodologies, what you'll find is, because you're working in shorter cycles, it will highlight things quicker. It will surface your problems quicker, which is a good thing. But it's how you respond to those issues and how you then resolve them and fix them is the key thing. So just by doing them, by adopting Scrum, will not automatically ensure you've got higher quality products. So I think, again, it's helping people understand, kind of going through the process that I've talked about here, looking at it in those stages. So if you're using Scrum and you're doing refinement and you're doing retros, ensure that you're coming at it with a quality lens, and you're talking about quality in the ways I've sort of alluded to, and find other people in your team to then obviously support that. And hopefully, it will help people understand. But sometimes the proof is just there in the findings, right? Oh, yeah, we've adopted Scrum, but the product's still rubbish. What are we doing wrong? And so, yeah, so I think some of it is just being able to learn quicker through using Scrum and those types of frameworks, but ultimately it won't automatically give you that quality product.
Definitely. Thank you, Stuart. I will just take up last question.
Yeah,
So,
sure.
With AI transforming the way QA teams approach people and process, what strategies do you find the most effective?
Oh, with AI transforming the way QA teams approach people and processes. I'm still very much on the fence with AI. I'm not going to lie. And that's not to say that it isn't, it can't do some amazing stuff, because it can. I think we're still very early in the world of AI in terms of knowing how we can best use it and how it can become a tool to aid what we already do. It feels very much to me like we're going back a few years when automation first really started blooming onto the scene, and everybody said that automation was going to take over the world and everybody was going to lose their jobs. It feels like we're almost in that space at the moment where we're just finding our way with it. We're thinking about how can we best utilize AI to benefit all the things that I'm talking about, right? I didn't specifically talk about AI because for me, AI sits within tools. And so for me, AI is a tool that we can use. It can leverage us. It can leverage different ways for us to gather information and use information and speed some things up. So I think it's how you then build that into your broader strategy, and that will differ as well. If you're in a highly regulated organization, AI may not be quite as palatable as maybe a less regulated organization, because there may be some issues with security and that kind of thing. So I think really there's a number of things that will have to play into it. But for me, AI is another tool in the toolkit that we need to figure out how we best utilize to gain the most benefit. But you've got to put it within a bigger piece around ultimately what are we trying to achieve. And that kind of comes back to what I was saying up front in terms of defining everything, and then all these tools can help you achieve what you're trying to achieve.
I think I agree. People have adopted AI in currently tools and not yet like redefined what the whole strategy will become. They are experimenting with these tools and adopting one, but I think
Exactly.
time.
Yeah, and I'm in that same world, right? So, I'd be really interested to hear more about how others are doing it right now, and how others that maybe are more mature in their AI experience would utilize it in the world that I've been talking about, or in this framework that I've been talking about this evening. I think that would be really cool.
I think that's about it for today.
Okay.
Definitely love to share your experience with AI and how do you have adopted in your day-to-day architecture. Feel free to ping us or Stuart with like if you have any thoughts on this, and like let's have a conversation on that. So just to wrap up, thank you so much, Stuart, for sharing such valuable insights. And a big thank you to all of you who joined us from around the world. Your participation and engagement are what make these sessions so enriching. And we hope you find today's discussion both insightful and inspiring. If you enjoyed the talk, don't forget to check out Stuart's Quality Talk podcast for more such deep dives into world of quality testing and tech. And make sure you follow our next episode, which will be going to be live very soon. And make sure you register, and hope to see you soon next time. Until
Yes.
next,
Thank you everybody for joining. Really appreciate it. Take care.